We're going to move on to part 9 of our textbook, Music for Stage and Screen. Today we're going to be focusing on music for the stage, and we'll have our student report on Leonard Bernstein.
On pages 496 through 502, we'll read about musical theater. Along with jazz and rock, the musical has been one of the most important American contributions to 20th century music. Musical theater is the new opera. So in other words, you have your costumes, your scenery, your acting, your orchestra, all of the elements of opera, except now there is speaking and singing, and they interact with one another and they dovetail into one another. Generally, musical theater is in 2 acts, with the second act being shorter than the first. The audience comes in, they sit for a longer time, then there's an intermission of some kind. Everyone can go down and use the restroom, get something to drink, and whatever they need to do, stretch their legs. And so then they will come back, and they're usually not as interested in sitting through another long act. So the second act is shorter, and then everyone can go home around 10:30 or something like that. It tends to be simpler musically than an opera, and as I said before, it contains spoken dialogue. So you're not going to have these really intricate songs and arias that are in the opera where the person is showing off their vocal abilities. The song, it's more important that the song fit into the musical and not overshadow the plot too much. It really has to move the plot forward and not just show off the singer. You have to often in the opera, you almost feel like the action has stopped so the singer can sing, because that's what you're there for, is to hear the great singer. Whereas in the musical, it just flows in and out of the dialogue. And also, as I said before, in an opera, even what would be considered spoken dialogue is sung. It's just like spoken on pitch. But in the musical theater, they will just speak. In the U.S., opera turned into vaudeville. Vaudeville was a variety show that had songs, comedy, juggling, acrobats, trained animals, etc., but there was no plot. So they would just go from one entertainment venue to the next. Kind of started out with the minstrel shows that would go around the United States, and they went from town to town to town. Well, now you have the vaudeville shows are more in a constructed theater that people would come and see, and it would be a nightly show that would stay in the town for a long, long time, or maybe just reinvent itself over time, and the same actors would be there and bring in new acts. But there was no plot. This turned into the American musical. People began to say, I like all this singing and dancing and comedy and juggling and acrobats, but it'd be kind of nice if there was a plot to go with it. And so that is what became the American musical. So you take this music, acting, dancing, singing, and add the plot, and you have a musical. One of the first musicals was Showboat, and was written by Kern and Hammerstein. Now we often hear of Oscar and Hammerstein. Oscar and Hammerstein wrote many, many musicals together, but they were not always work together as a team. And early on, they worked separately, and they teamed up later on in their careers. But Showboat was written by Kern and Hammerstein. It was written in 1927 and was produced by Zig Zigfield. And he was a big producer of the variety shows, of vaudeville. And he took a step out in faith and kind of a risk to produce a musical. He didn't know if it would be successful or not. And it was successful, and musicals have been a hit ever since. And so go ahead and watch this little documentary. It's a short documentary about Showboat and how it was produced and how it changed the course and the direction of musical entertainment on the stage. Another one of my favorites is Wouldn't It Be Loverly from My Fair Lady. Again, My Fair Lady is just a great musical. It's portraying life in England. It was written in 1956. Again, it's combining some music, some acting, some dancing, some singing all together in this musical, which is talking about, the whole storyline is that there's a flower girl who is uneducated and does not speak proper English. This gentleman who has studied phonetics all his life kind of makes a wager with one of his friends that he could pass Eliza, who is the young lady who has no education and is just a flower girl in the streets, that he could pass her as a duchess by this certain ball. And so they take her in and teach her how to walk and how to talk properly, and so that she is actually able to fool people by going to a big ball. And the rumor was that she was actually a princess by the time they were done working with her and helping her and turning into My Fair Lady. And so this is one of the songs early in the musical where she is thinking about possibly going and getting this training because it was kind of offered off the cuff, and she decides she's thinking about whether or not she's going to take them up on the offer to teach her proper English. So, hope you enjoy these two clips. On page 499 through 500, you'll read about Leonard Bernstein. He was born in 1918 and he died in 1990. He was one of the great composers and conductors of the 20th century, and he wrote the musical West Side Story. And we're going to have a student report now on Leonard Bernstein. Let's look at some Bernstein tidbits. Bernstein was a conductor, a concert pianist, composer, author, and lecturer. He was highly successful in all of these areas and just a brilliant man and a fantastic musician. When he was 25, he was appointed assistant conductor to the New York Philharmonic. The primary conductor became ill just hours before one concert, and Bernstein filled in. The concert was broadcast nationwide on the radio, and it was a huge success, thus launching his career. So this has happened to many people where that, they fill in for someone who is ill, and people see how talented they are, and so their career is launched. And that is what happened to Bernstein. His most famous composition is West Side Story, which was written in 1957 when he was 39 years old. And he just continued this long life and long career of music, and he did not retire from conducting until he was 72, and he died that year. So he just worked until he was quite old, and I think he probably lived for his work, and so a lot of people this happens to when they retire, they die within a year because that was what gave them their vitality. And I feel like that was the way it was with Bernstein. This music, conducting and composing and performing was his life. The musical West Side Story is talking about the conflicts that were going on even in 1957 between the Hispanic community and the white community. It is talking about gang wars and gang fighting and gang activity, and how that the Hispanics were coming to America for the promise of a brighter future, and yet there was this discrimination that they felt like they were being faced with that would not allow them to get the good jobs or allow them to move forward and progress because they spoke with an accent or because they were Hispanic. This song, America, is sung by between the men and the women in the Shark gang that are talking to one another about the opportunities in America, but yet the difficulties of living in America. And it's in mixed meter. And so you're going to hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. That's that mixed meter. And the words in that little mixed meter are, I like to be in America. Okay by me in America. Everything free in America. For a small fee in America. And so you have this mixed meter going on. Again, it's talking about social issues of the day. They're not backing away from the difficulties and social issues that are going on. It's not merely entertainment. They're saying we need to tackle the problems that are going on socially in the world and in the United States. And there's a lot of singing and dancing, and so it is entertaining, yet it's getting across a message of gun violence and of gang violence and of discrimination while being entertained. So here we are, America from West Side Story. In the song Tonight from West Side Story by Bernstein, you'll see the music for this in the listening guide on page 502. You have a dramatic ensemble. You've got the Jets are singing about how that they're going to have their day tonight, and they're going to win this battle, and they're going to beat the Sharks in this fight that they're going to have, this gang fight they're going to have. And then you have Anita, who's the main character, who is one of the lead female characters on the Sharks side, saying that we're going to, get our revenge. And then yet you have Tony singing about his love for Maria. And these one of them is in the Sharks camp and one of them is in the Jets camp. But yet they love each other. It's kind of like the Romeo and Juliet setup, where that two people fall in love that are on opposite sides of the spectrum and who are on enemy camps with one another. And so you have Tony, who is singing and hoping for a redemption between the two groups, and hoping that they will come together and see how that they can work together and not have to fight one another. And then you have the gang members who are saying we're going to fight tonight. And of course, spoiler alert, in the end, the person who is killed is Tony. He is the only person who is shot and killed. And Maria has him in her arms and is saying how that it's not guns that kill people, it's people who kill people. And she has lost her love, and everyone is realizing that fighting is not the answer. So listen to this YouTube clip of the Tonight Ensemble from West Side Story. As time went by, musicals began to appear first in the movies, and they would maybe later become a Broadway musical, but they would start out as a musical in the theater. And also, money was speaking, and people began to realize that we're producing these musicals, that individual songs within the musical could be resold as a single if it was really well written and very entertaining. And so there would be showstoppers in the middle of the musical. They didn't really carry the plot forward. They were mostly there for entertainment value and for soundtrack resale value. We'll see this in the song Step in Time from Mary Poppins. It doesn't do hardly anything to carry forward the plot, but it is just lively, entertaining, singing and dancing. It was interesting that Pamela Travers, who wrote Mary Poppins, didn't want this to be a musical. She wanted it to be a rather serious movie. But of course, Disney turned it into this wonderful musical, Mary Poppins. Now later it was actually allowed, Pamela Travers actually allowed it to be produced as a show on stage and as a musical on stage, but she did not want it to be portrayed by any American actors or even brought to America. And it was only later in, I think maybe even after she died, that it was brought to America. And the new remake of Mary Poppins was only on the agreement of Pamela Travers' relatives that they could remake Mary Poppins into the newer musical version that's out. So I hope you enjoy Step in Time from Mary Poppins, which was just a showstopper put in for fun and entertainment, not necessarily to move the plot forward. An example of milking a plot and milking a musical for all it's worth is The Lion King. It came out first as a Disney animated movie, and then second, it came out as a Broadway musical, and now it's back again as a live action computer generated movie. And so they would even be using the same songs and the same plot, but it's in a slightly different visual effect and new performers, and so it's slightly different, but yet they keep recreating the same thing over and over again. And so we're going to watch I Just Can't Wait to Be King in the 3 different ways that it has been produced, and so you can see how they're very similar, yet slightly different, but yet again, ka-ching, 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 they keep making money off of this same song in different variations.
Remember to read pages 495 to 502 and listen to all the examples that are posted on YouTube on Music for the Stage.